Hello, and welcome to RGS Completing Costs and Funding in the Budget Form. In this tutorial, I'll be building on previous videos to guide you through how to complete sections 2 and 3 and authorise the budget form both from a researcher and hospital administrator or HA perspective. Only the principal investigator, PI or PI delegate associated with the site and invited HAs can edit the budget form. This first part of the video is from the PI or PI delegate perspective. Prior to completing Section 1 and adding departments and HAs, you should have already contacted the departments to make them aware of the project and their confidentiality requirements, as well as ascertaining who will enter the supporting department's costs. This can be the head of the department, their delegate, or by the PI or PI delegate based on previously supplied service agreements. Section 1 must be an edit to invite HAs to access the form and the project. Click Invite to quote or authorise. To reduce delays, invite all the heads of the supporting departments and their delegates at the same time to enter their costs and authorise their quotes. If the supporting department costs are being entered by the PI or PI delegate and then authorised by the head of the supporting department, only invite them when you are ready for them to authorise their section. Do not invite the head of the research department at this time or the PI associated with a third-party agency. The invited HAs will have a task created and be sent an email with a link to the task. Next, proceed to complete the costs in Section 2 of the Research Department and the third-party agency, as well as the supporting departments if required. Section 2 contains the project budget for the site. This is where the research-related activity costs related to the protocol, participant numbers, and the project timeframe are entered for the departments added in Section 1. It is acknowledged that a research budget is often an estimate of costs, especially if it is based on proposed participant recruitment, but it is a necessary exercise to ensure that the project is adequately funded. Its format is similar to an Excel spreadsheet with columns and rows, which are divided into separate sections for each department. The research department is listed first, followed by the supporting department, and then third-party agencies. For readability, sections can be opened or closed. At the bottom is a comments box which can be used to explain a shortfall in funding compared to costs, or when a supporting department wishes to notify the PI that a service is being provided in kind. This in-kind support can then be transposed into Section 3 relating to funding and support. Each department has at least one row added to enter costs. The research department has 3 mandatory rows to enter overhead charges and ethics and governance review costs. Ethics and research governance or site review fees should be added in as a cost even if they are provided in kind. Visit the Ethics and Research Governance Office's website for the fee schedule and enter the amount that would normally be charged for a commercial project review. In multi-centre research, the ethics review fee should only be added to one site's budget, usually the site associated with the coordinating principal investigator. The overhead field has been designed to cater for either a fixed overhead amount or a percentage of project cost depending on current WA health policy. This is currently being revised, so check with your business manager to establish the correct amount and what cost it is applied against. If it is a fixed amount, enter the amount here. To change the field from fixed to percentage, select a project item that the percentage will be applied against. Then enter the percentage. The total overhead amount will be populated here. In this example, the percentage is applied only against shared salary items in the research department. To apply a percentage to the whole project budget, all items will need to be selected. Extra rows can be added using the Add button. If added in error, they can be selected and removed. Cost items are selected from a list of standard items determined by the Independent Hospital Pricing Authority, or IPA. These are sorted by major categories. Select the service item under the major category or search for it. Then select it. These will then be populated. A list of these items is available from the Help Wiki. If this item does not describe the cost adequately, for example, how you calculated a salary or how the cost is documented in a service agreement, you can rename it in the cost description. This is not a mandatory field. Costs are entered as a cost per item by the quantity of items, which will automatically calculate as the total cost. Depending on the item, the quantity may vary. For example, the quantity for tests may equate to the number of tests by the number of participants over the yearly time frame. The quantity for salaries may be entered as a lump sum or an amount multiplied by the number of participants or by the number of project years. It is preferable to enter costs in a similar format to how you will be funded. This will vary greatly from projects that are funded by a grant to participant-based payments in a commercial clinical trial. It is recommended that you use a salary calculating template available from finance managers for simple projects to ensure on-costs and inflation are captured, or the research budget template on the RGS website for clinical trials. Though note for longer-term projects, this template does not automatically capture inflation, so a percentage must be added manually. Ensure that potential costs are included in the budget, for example, amendments or screen failures. Estimate the number that may occur or the number that will be funded by the sponsor. Even if the estimated number is incorrect, as long as it is matched by the agreed funding in Section 3, it will be sufficient. WA Health Policy is under revision regarding the cost type, but at this time this is still a mandatory field. An item is considered project-specific if it involves diagnostics, tests or a drug. This applies to all supporting department and third-party agency items. A cost is shared if it involves salaries, as salaries may be pooled into one cost centre and shared across multiple projects in a research department. This example shows the shared salary costs with the overhead applied only to these items in the research department. Once costs are entered, they will be calculated at the top of the page. They will not be displayed under authorised costs until they've been authorised by the HA, PI or the PI delegate. Only these people can see the authorised buttons for their departments. Either the PI or the PI delegate can add the third-party agency costs and authorise them. For third-party agency costs, the service agreement should be submitted as a supporting document with the budget forms to substantiate these costs. Once authorised, their name and authorisation date will be populated. The authorised costs will now be calculated and displayed at the top of the form. Keep in mind, as no funding has yet been entered, a shortfall will be displayed, and trigger the comments section as a mandatory field. If this box is empty and there are no comments to document, enter not applicable to override this field. This can be updated later if there is a shortfall. The next section of the video is from the hospital administrator's perspective when they are invited to enter costs and authorise a department. When you invite an HA, they receive an invitation email with a link to a task. This task can be actioned or declined if the HA thinks it has been sent in error. If declined, an email will be sent to the person that invited them. The task will then take them to the budget form, which opens in a new window and will show their invitation status as accepted. If the HA wishes to review the project details or protocol before entering the costs, they must navigate back to the project through the My Tasks tab to My Projects. Once in My Projects, they must click on the PRN to access the project workspace. Once in the project workspace, they should navigate to the Applications tab, Ethics Approval and Submitted section. They can then access the protocol and other ethics documents in this section. In the budget form, click Edit and then click Next to go to Section 2. Once they've located their department, the HA should enter costs as previously demonstrated. Once costs are entered, they can be authorised by the head of the supporting department. Their name and date will be authorised and populated here, and an email will be sent to the PI and the PI delegate. These costs can be amended by clicking Unlock, which will remove the authorisation name and put the form back into edit. An HA can unauthorise their own department, and the PI and PI delegate can unauthorise all departments, but they will have to re-invite the HA to reauthorise them. Once the section is authorised, the HA should save and close the form. Their task is now complete. The task will disappear when the task page is refreshed, or when the HA signs out. An invited HA can decline to provide a service, but be mindful the mandatory fields must be completed first. But the HA must provide a reason. This will display declined, and an email will be sent to the PI and PI delegate. This last part of the video is again from the PI or PI delegate perspective. Once all costs are added and the supporting departments and third-party agencies are authorised, you can progress to Section 3 to enter the site project funding or support. In Section 3, the PI or PI delegate should add the monetary funding or in-kind support against the cost items that have been pre-populated from Section 2. Keep in mind that the HAs for the supporting departments do have access to enter the funding details for their departments if they wish to, though this is not commonly done. All project funders are populated from project details, so remove any funders that are not related to this site. If you have removed a funder in error, or have added a funder to project details recently and it is not showing, refresh the list. Only funders displayed here can be selected as a funder in the form. Once you have the correct funders, select their funding status. This is to indicate whether the funding or in-kind support is being applied for, confirmed or received. The layout and functionality in Section 3 is similar to Section 2. The first 7 columns populate the costs from Section 2 to use as a reference. Against these cost items, you must enter how the cost will be covered and by which funder or sponsor organisation. This can be either as monetary funding or in-kind support, or a mixture of both. For example, when a salary is covered by both a grant and match funding. In-kind support must always have a dollar value. The fund description is not a mandatory field, but it can be used to define the funding in more detail or describe how it is referred to in a funding agreement. If the cost is matched by greater or the same amount in monetary funding, the in-kind support will be greyed out. Reduce this amount to be able to enter in-kind support. It is preferable if funding matches costs line by line. But if this does not match the funding agreement, for example in per participant payments, then enter all the participant funding against one item and insert a comment in the fund description or the comments box. The more information you provide to the business manager and research governance officer on how you calculated your budget will help expedite your review. Ensure you have entered match funding or in-kind support for potential costs, for example amendments. Once all the funding has been entered, the PI or the PI delegate can invite the head of the research department to review the whole budget and provide their authorisation in the research department section. The head of the research department should be aware of the whole budget, as their department is ultimately responsible for conducting the project. To reduce duplication, their signature is captured here in the budget form instead of on the site-specific assessment form. They are invited and authorise their section following the same procedure as previously demonstrated. The PI and the PI delegate will receive an email when this has occurred. Once the budget form is complete, a shortfall or surplus will be displayed. Enter a comment below if there is a shortfall. The PI or PI delegate can authorise the whole form so it is ready for submission. The Authorise button is located at the bottom of the page, but the form must be in Edit. The PI and PI delegate can unauthorise it to make changes. The form is now authorised. The budget form can be unauthorised and printed in the application's active grid. This is the printed version. If unauthorised in the grid, unlike other RGS forms, the budget cannot be authorised in the grid. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you have found it informative.